Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Design 59. In today's video, I've got 9 easy projects using the IOD holiday release transfers. So let's get started. My first piece is like a little wooden snow globe that I bought at Michael's, I believe last year, and it was out at Halloween. So the little glass part of the snow globe is actually plastic. And I knew that it was going to be hard to scrape it, so I decided to put like a little index card up underneath that frame and that plastic so that I wouldn't accidentally paint onto that plastic. And I painted it with Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. And I painted all around the outside with that same black color. And then the little wood insert that is going to be on the back, I painted that with Rust-Oleum linen white. Now, the transfer that I'm going to be using comes from the new transfer set called Kitschy, which is sort of a retro. And this is the little snowman. So I painted it and I spray painted it with Rust-Oleum clear sealer before I put the transfer on. And then I just use the little tool to rub it on that transfer, and then I pick it up and then I go back over that transfer and make sure that it's all set onto that. And then the little pieces of the transfer that I cut off, I'll be using that also on this project. And once I get the transfer all on, I go back with that plastic sheet and I just rub over it really gently, and that's called burnishing. Now the inside of it, I paint that with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And that's a little difficult because you can't really tell where that plastic is. But I needed the inside to be white. And while that white is drying, then I take the little extra pieces of the transfer and I just fussy cut all those little extra pieces because I want to cut off the part that's actually the bottom of the snowman because I don't need that anymore. Now I want to have some little pieces that are kind of sticking up on inside of this little snow globe, and the only solution that I could come up with was just some air dry clay, and I just kind of molded it around that bottom and then I just glued it in. Now if it had been a flat surface, I could have used like a little Jenga block or something like that, but because it was rounded, I kind of had to figure out what to do. So while all that was setting up, then I took those little transfers and I rubbed those onto the side edges down at the bottom of the snow globe. And I folded them on from the side onto the front. Okay, now by now that clay is dry enough to where I can go ahead and put some little things on the inside. And these are some little resin molds from the smaller trees from the retired mold called Boughs of Holly. And I tried to glue it in really well. And then this is just that little snow that you can kind of sprinkle in. And I put glue down at the bottom to hold it. And then I put the back on. And then this is a resin mold that's also from the Boughs of Holly. All right, before I show you the final result, this is just a really small tray that I thrifted a while back. I painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white, and then I used the smaller deer from the transfer set called Crimson Velvet and put that in the middle of it. And I believe that transfer that I put around the front of the tray came also from that transfer. And then once all that's set up, then I use my vintage textures just to go on the inside and just add a little bit more dimension to it. Now when I put that transfer down, I realized that one side just extended on that tray just a little bit more, so I put a little bit more on it. Okay, and then the last project in this little segment is a tray that I thrifted, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. And I put the really large antler transfer from Crimson Velvet in the middle. And then all around the edge, I'm using clay molds from the IOD Holly Lane, which is an older Christmas mold. And the reason I'm using clay on these is because I know that I may overlap them, which is a little bit more difficult if you use resin. And I just played around with it. It took me quite a while to get all of these molds made and to be happy with like what it looked like. But I really liked the final result. And with the clay, you put cornstarch in the mold, and then you push your clay into the mold, and then you pop it out. And then I use Tight Bond Thick and Quick to put all of my molds on. So because this mold is retired and you may not have it, let me give you some other options. On the new mold called Autumn Cottage, there's some greenery that you could use. Or in the release that was earlier this year, there was the mold that was called Viridis. And that would be an option if you wanted to put molds all around the outside edges. And I won't repeat myself when it comes to putting the transfers on. Just remember that if you use a chalk paint that doesn't have a sealer in it, go ahead and paint it and let that dry and then put a clear sealer on it. And then that transfer will go on really well. And then the really large swag part of the Holly Lane is what I put down at the bottom. Once it sets up for about 10 or 15 minutes, then I go ahead and paint it because that helps reduce the cracking in it. And then I just use a really soft bristle brush and I just pat that paint onto it. And I try to be really careful so I don't mess up any of the details in that clay. And not only did it take a pretty good while to get all of these molds on, but it also took a pretty good while to get all of this paint on because I wanted to be super careful with those molds. And once that paint was completely dry, then I went back with Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain in the color Natural because I didn't want it to be really dark, but I did want to add enough of that Voodoo Gel Stain to bring out the detail in the molds. And when I put the Voodoo Gel Stain on it, I put on in just a little section of it, and then I go back with the baby wipe and wipe it off really easy. And then that takes that stain and kind of sets it into the crevices. And then I went back with my Vintage Texture stamp and just kind of went around here and there. And I believe I used stone gray ink on that because I didn't want it to stand out too much. And here's a final picture of my first 3 projects. So if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and become part of our family. So my next project is a piece that I thrifted when I was in Ohio this summer. And it's that kind of plastic that they used to sell back, I believe, in the maybe 80s and 90s. And I painted it with Waverly chalk paint in the color moss. And it probably would have been easier to spray paint it, but I didn't have any spray paint in that particular color. So this took a pretty good while to get all of this painted because I needed to get in all of those little details. And then on the inside, I painted it with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. Now, the little transfer that I use in this comes from the transfer called Yuletide. And on this one, all I did was I painted it and I put the transfer on it. And then that was it, and I was really happy with it. And remember, if there's any of the little pieces that don't transfer on, just lay it back down and kind of rub over it, and that will come off of that little plastic sheet. Then my next project with one of the transfers is just from a large wooden tag, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white. And I use my stone gray ink with my IOD Kindest Regards stamp, and I stamp that on the back side before I put my transfer on. And what I like to do is I paint it and I stamp it, and then I put my clear sealer on it. Now, the 3 candlesticks that I'm using comes from the transfer set called Crimson Velvet. And actually, I put the tallest one in the middle and the 2 short ones down at the bottom. And actually, they overlap just a little bit. And just remember that you can overlap your transfers. It's really easy, and it doesn't mess them up. And then I just tie a little ribbon in it. And then the little attachment is just something that I bought at Hobby Lobby that I just glued that on. Now, my last project in this little segment is just an old cutting board that actually has something on the other side of it. And I painted this side with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And this little wreath comes from the transfer set called Kitschy, the more retro transfer. I put that on, and then up in the top left-hand corner, I just use a little stamp from the ephemera type stamp that came out this summer, and I put a little bow on it. And here's my next 3 projects. Just really simple and easy projects that are just fun to make at Christmas time and to use around your house or to use as gifts to people. So what do you think? So my last 3 projects that are just so simple. This first one is just like a little wooden arch that I bought some off of Amazon, and it comes with a little base. And I painted it with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream, and I stamped it with the IOD stamp set that came out this summer, I believe, and it's called Ephemera Type. And if you haven't gotten that, it is wonderful. It's got a lot of different pieces, and it's got small script on it. And this gorgeous tree comes from the transfer set called Yuletide, and I just love it. So I'm making one of the molds from the IOD Trimmings 1, and I don't need to make the entire piece because it's just going to go on the front of this little base that this sign sits inside. So I make that with air dry clay, and then I use my Tite Bond glue to glue that right onto the front of it. And then kind of to measure what I need, I just go ahead and put it on there, and I just use my little credit card that I use to smooth it out on the back, and I just use that to kind of cut it off. And I paint it with all of this with black, and then I put some gold gilding wax on the front of that trim, and then I go all around the edge of this little wooden piece with my stamp, and it's also with the stone gray ink. Okay, the next little piece is just one of the little wooden houses that you can get from the Dollar Tree, I believe, or Dollar General. And then I painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And the bird also comes from the Yuletide transfer. And then once again, I just pulled out some little pieces from the stamp set called Ephemera Type and just kind of put them here and there. And yes, I stamped a little bit over those transfers, but it's not really noticeable. And then to finish it off, I just tied a little green ribbon down at the bottom with just a little shoestring bow. And then it's finished, and I just love the way that this one turned out as well. Now, my last project is going to be a little bell that I thrifted when I was up in Ohio this summer. And I started out by painting it with Dixie Belle Slick Stick. And then I went back with Rust-Oleum Linen White Chalk paint and painted over that. But the Slick Stick just kind of puts a primer on it so that when you do put the transfer on, it won't pull up any of that paint. So the little transfer that I used on this one came from the transfer set called Crimson Velvet. And it was just a really small rose, and it was really hard to kind of transfer it on. So in all honesty, I just used my fingers, and I just kind of pushed that transfer on really hard, and it came right off. So I'm not going to say that this is the greatest way to do, but on this little small surface, it worked really well. So I just used my finger to rub it on. And then I wanted to be like my friend Johnie from Karoleena's Cottage and use some stamps on it. She is a pro at putting stamps on her projects. And I'm not that good. So on this one, I used some little stamps from the stamp set called Rose Toile. And then there's some little French script on the, like down at the bottom. And then on the back side, I used just a little rose cluster from the stamp set called Veranda. And I put that on the back as well. So make sure you go to Karoleena's Cottage and watch Johnie's video because she's so good at stamps. And I'm not. I need to watch her videos more so I can get just a little bit better. And here's my last 3 projects. So what do you think? So friends, we are at the end of the video today. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite. And depending on when you watch this video, there may still be some pieces left from the Christmas release. Remember, the Christmas releases are limited, so once they're gone, they're gone. And if you are interested in any of the pieces from the holiday release or any other IOD products or decoupage paper, make sure to use my affiliate link below in the description box. Johnie has a great selection and beautiful pieces of decoupage paper, and she carries all of the IOD products. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been so much fun to create all of these pieces, and I still have a lot of pieces that I've created that I need to get ready for videos. So once again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and make sure to go to my Facebook page and follow me because I do live videos on there as well. I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you, friends.